Do you need encouragement to turn tragedies into your own triumphant life story? If so, this podcast is for you. Listen to powerful guests who have persevered through challenges so you can gain strength to build your championship life. The host of Professor of Perseverance podcast, Dr. James Perdue.
Hey, come on in. It's time for us to get a little bit of firing up. Fire me up. Going to fire you up. All right. Get some inspiration, motivation. Hey, it's come up with a story that you learned from someone, that how they went through something, and you may be going through something similar, and you can get an idea how they got through it, and then pay it forward, baby. Pass it on. Don't hold it. Don't be greedy. Pass it forward. Help the next person. Hey, the guy we're going to talk to is Dr. Chad Scott. Said he went from therapist turned explorer. All right. He says going from finding light in the world in the darkest place. Plus, one thing I'm interested in is he's a liver transplant survivor. I have a little connection with that. So, Chad, thank you for being on here, buddy.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, James. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're going to have a good old time and get some other people all fired up by the time we're done.
Right.
So, I'll talk to you a little bit beforehand. That I got a friend, Mike, if you pop on, another liver transplant survivor. Him and Mike and I went to school together. Oh, and cool. I saw him last year ago, and he told me about the liver transplant. So I think everything's going well for him.
Great. Well, and actually, before we get started, I'm just going to throw this out there just so I don't forget, based on
go ahead.
Is, everything you hear today is because of my donor. And I don't know who my donor is. I wrote a letter to the family and I haven't heard anything back, but that person is my hero. And so all your listeners, I hope they check the box on their, to be a donor, because, I'm living proof. Your friend is living proof that, life can, you can just change somebody's life so much by the gift of donation.
What's that movie? Was it Will Smith, 7 pounds? And he ends up donating his eyes, his liver, lung, kidneys, but he had committed suicide to do that.
Oh, geez. Yeah,
because he wanted out. I think I had to go back and watch the whole thing, but he had something going on. And he was, by the time you watch the movie, he's been talking to a psychiatrist and stuff the whole time. But he put in got in a tub and opened up a big old tank full of jellyfish or something that stung him. And right before he did, he gets on the phone and calls 911. And then you get to see the people that got his eyes and got his lungs.
Oh, wow.
And
I'm gonna have to check that out. You're right. Yeah,
story.
Yeah.
But
well, you know what? That's actually a true story in my life. There is a person I know that's kind of near and dear to my heart, and I'm not going to give details, but that person had committed suicide at a young age. Very unfortunate, and they did it in a hospital so they could harvest their organs, and did it in a way that their organs could be harvested. And just, it's a sad situation, but that person did save lives.
Yeah. And again, people that, sorry for that with suicide, but at least he had enough thought. I want to help other people.
Yeah.
I don't want to be here, but I can help other people. Yeah. And I respect that. Yeah. And I'm not saying suicide's a thing to do, people. Don't get around with that.
Right.
Okay. But I just say I can respect the decision from that. But anybody that signed that donor card, you are a hero. Yes, you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So we should all be signing those cards.
Yeah. And suicide, I mean, I'm a therapist. I'm still a therapist, and I'm an explorer and a therapist. But that's a daily conversation I have with people. And I think it's important to talk about suicide because it is something that unfortunately happens way too often. And, it's a forever decision that we can, if there's a message to get out there is, hope is available. I mean, times change. People, you'll get through that depression or whatever, is causing that. life is better. So reach out for help.
Well, I tell people the reason I started my podcast is, one, people are tired of hearing me talk. So I get your message and other people's message out there. That way I can help. But it originated that I attempted suicide 3 times in 3 days. That's
Wow.
how bad it wanted out.
Yeah.
And, living through a suicide attempt survivor, they make you see a psychiatrist. So I had to see this guy for a year. And he encouraged me that for whatever reason, God didn't take me. So which means I still have a purpose. And part of it is share my story. And then eventually got to me doing this to help other people get their message out.
Yeah, actually in my book, I have I write about places that are both built on light and shadow. So places like Jerusalem and Egypt and things like that. But I also talk about the Golden Gate Bridge, where it has the most documented suicides there out of any structure. And I talk about the Kigahara Forest in Japan, which is, they call it the suicide forest. But there's a study on the Golden Gate Bridge of people that have jumped off and actually survived, and has like a 98% fatality rate, but 2% of them survived, and they did a study on some of these people, and they found that when you jump off, you get help. You're forced to get help, and a lot of them, well, actually, I don't think any of them went on to commit suicide. And most of them actually became advocates for mental health because of the experience. Because what they said also is after they leaped, they immediately regretted their decision, and then they lived when they hit the water. And yeah,
I did see one story about somebody survived. I forgot the whole story, but how they're an advocate to fight for life. Yeah. So and Big Chad, his book is Beyond the Darkness: Transformative Journeys Through Dark Tourism. All right, this is gonna be interesting to go from here, because I want to find out. I want to live through you with all your traveling. I would like to travel more with me in my wheelchair and getting older, but I would like to do a little bit more. I've been over in Africa and Germany, and of course old Paris over there with the Eiffel Tower and Comora Islands. And
well, you've been some places for sure,
but I did all that at one time. I was on a trip with a church event after I got saved, and a year later, God had put me on this big thing. So there was just one event, 2 weeks worth, and a couple of places only there just long enough for the layover, But at least I can say I was still in Germany. I was still in Africa, even though it was just for the layover. So all right, Chad, go ahead and let's go and get started, man. I'm gonna live through you on this.
All right,
it's gonna be fun. Oh, go ahead. You just talk. I'm sorry.
Oh, you want me to start it?
You put us in the middle where you think we need to start with your story, and we'll just ride from there.
Okay, so you just shoot out the questions as I go through, then, I guess. So I would say I had a pretty normal childhood, and I'm from northern Minnesota here, so I played hockey and sports year round, and chased a girl to college. I never did good in school until I got to college. And then I say I found my brain in college and ended up, getting a PhD in counseling, and found the love of my life in 2006. I had a son just before that too. But anyway, life was great. I had no complaints. I never really dealt with anything. And then about 10 years ago, I started developing autoimmune issues, vasculitis, which is the same thing that killed Harold Ramis from the Ghostbusters.
Okay.
And the doctors didn't know if I had a deadly type or a type that would pass. And I've always kind of carried a little undercurrent of anxiety, but it just came out, significantly during that time. And I think part of it too is when you have an autoimmune condition that's systemic, it affects your brain. There, these cytokines that are, as part of your immune system, and it actually inflames your brain enough to where it actually adds to anxiety, adds to depression, and there's a strong gut brain link and all that kind of stuff. So during that time, I, this great marriage, together about 10 years at that point. And then, it really started struggling. I started getting insecure and making insecure statements. And at that same time, my dad had sepsis and almost passed away, and just went through, I started getting a stomach ache, and then I had to, started passing blood, and,
Well, doesn't it seem like, doesn't it seem like when one thing comes, seem like
oh man,
the whole thing, you're talking about what you're dealing with, and then you're having to deal and worry about your dad, and
Yeah.
then other stuff come on top of it. Man, it
Yeah.
seemed like when it rains, it pours.
Yeah, and it absolutely poured. It was a thunderstorm for sure. And yeah, so I started passing blood, and it's like I had no idea what was happening to me, and I was just coming out of my mind with anxiety. I'm a therapist, and I'm just a human, and I had no control over it whatsoever. So my wife left me, and then speaking of pouring, it's pouring outside now. It got really
There you
loud
go.
all of a sudden.
Bring it this way. We need a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm in
yeah.
Tennessee. You bring it this
Oh,
way.
yeah.
We're
Yeah.
supposed to get something this afternoon. Now, let me
Okay.
ask you, said your wife left you. Is
Yeah.
it because of all the illness?
Yeah,
going
yeah.
on,
I mean, there's a little
and
more
she
to it,
just
but
couldn't-
that's
she
really
couldn't handle it. It was like
Yep.
the last straw of everything.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean I could probably have a whole nother podcast on how that came apart, but that really is the gist of it. Is my insecurity and that kind of, that ended it. Yeah.
Okay.
So I really struggled with the divorce. I really struggled with, the divorce part was easy. I mean, it was just signing a piece of paper, but the emotional aspect, it's, I really started self-medicating with beer, and
There you go.
I really struggled. I did really well in terms of the psychological aspects of it. After a little while, I went and saw a therapist. I started pulling out my own coping skills. I started meditating. I started really doing a lot of, things that take care of your immune system, like gut health and, lavender,
I'm
and
just
just
thinking,
all these holistic
how,
methods.
I'm just thinking how ironic that is. And I never thought of it until you said it, but a therapist seeing a therapist, we're
Yep.
just thinking, but it makes a lot of sense. It's like a doctor has his own doctor,
Absolutely.
medical doctor and everything, but that never thought of it till you
Yeah,
said it.
1 in 4 to 1 in 5 people every year, should be seeing a therapist, because they have a diagnosable mental illness every year. So, and about half of all people in their life, have a diagnosable illness to where they should see a therapist. And I would say most therapists have seen therapists. There was a stigma, and that's probably part of the reason why my divorce happened too. Is I wasn't wanting to see a therapist. I wasn't wanting to take medications because I'm a pilot and I didn't want to lose my pilot's license. And I was going through this special training to get my instrument rating. And I was like right towards the end. And then all this happened at that time. And it's like, oh, I'm so close. And I figured I could get through it, and I couldn't. And yeah, everything kind of fell apart. And I have a lot of regrets, but I
think you were getting ready to mention it, the stigma of seeing a therapist. And hopefully it's not as strong a stigma today as it was when I was a kid growing up, because we were always taught, oh, get up, put some dirt on you, let's go, move on.
toughen up.
You didn't cry for nothing. You didn't open up to anybody about anything. But I'm a strong believer now, like you said, 1 in 4, maybe less than that. Everybody should find somebody they can talk to, whether they consider a therapist or not, but somebody you can trust that's not going to stab you in the back, whatever you open up with.
Yeah.
So,
Like my thought about what mental health was back then would be being a stoic like John Wayne, where, nothing bothers me. I'm tough pilgrim, and you're not gonna, anger was the only good emotion to show, and what I found, and I tried to do that, actually, I tried to just kind of channel John Wayne and just tough it through, and that doesn't work. So actually my dark tourism experiences really taught me to be a true stoic, which is somebody who, accepts the things you can't change and change the things you can, kind of like the serenity prayer is
the serenity prayer,
very similar to the Stoics. Yeah.
The very first time I heard that, I had my neck broke, and I was
wow
3 months in the hospital, but it was within the first week when I went to rehab. and this nurse did the Serenity Prayer, and I've never heard it. And I said, wow, did you make that up?
Yeah.
And then she
Yeah.
actually brought me, a bookmark of that Serenity Prayer.
Yeah.
So I had it for about
Cool.
30 years, then I lost it, but I had it for a long
Oh,
time.
well,
So
you can get it just about anywhere.
that's right.
You
But
know,
but
it's
she gave me that one. I
it's an important
kept it for a
saying.
long time. It is.
Yeah.
It's a real true. Take it for what it's worth. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a lot of wisdom there. And I think
Mm,
too that people who have had experiences, now I have, like I was in my mid 30s probably when all this started happening, at mid to late 30s. And I'm 47 now. And I really hadn't had to deal with anything. And then all of a sudden just wham, then it poured. And that tea, lack of better words, you either have to shit or get off the pot. And you
hmm
can stay in a comfort zone, and your comfort zone over time, if you stay in a comfort zone, your comfort zone just gets smaller and smaller over time. So I really went the other track, and I think dark tourism has really helped me. And that's kind of what my book is about. It's a memoir of my experiences going through these dark places. As I'm talking about these dark places, kind of like a tour guide that talks about their selves, and also the reflections and all those types of things that you get in those dark places. But they really help me to live life as a really a true stoic, which is really good for mental health.
Now, did you get into all this dark tourism? Get
Mhm.
into this after your illness, during it, because you're going, I don't know what's going to happen here, so let's get out and live life. Or, of course, I
Um,
knew you had to be healthy enough to go. I know that,
mhm, mhm.
but so I mean, is this what drove you, or did you already had this thought in your head beforehand, and then you had to put it on the back burner for a while?
Well, and that's it's interesting because I mean, you'd think it'd be just an easy answer to that, but of course it's not.
Yeah.
It's complex. But um, I've always had an interest in history. Always traveled. I always brought my son places. Always went places with my wife. Always went places with my family growing up. But and we always found ourselves in historical types places. We all had an interest in history. And then I started traveling on my own, I guess, after my divorce. And I found myself in even more deeper, darker places. Like I had gone to Auschwitz and
Oh
Hiroshima
wow. Yeah.
and,
Yeah. Yeah.
some places that are just really, really dark and really historical. The Whitney Plantation down there in New Orleans or near New Orleans it's a plantation coming from the slavery point of view.
Mm.
So, and that just like knocked my socks off. And I feel really sad going through these places, but you learn so much from, about yourself going through them and about humanity and the stories of survival, even, how people made
Oh
it through
yeah.
some of those
Yeah.
things. There's about 15% of the people made it through Auschwitz. And it's like, you take home some of their powers when you go through those places.
Yes, but yeah,
Um,
especially if you get an opportunity, you can listen to one speaking. When I was a
yeah.
teacher, one of the social study teachers in 8th grade had a survivor, come through
Hmm.
and would talk to the kid, and she was in her 90s. Here she is talking to the kid, and I taught 7th grade, so I would go sit outside the door just so I can hear part of the conversation, without interrupting the class.
Hmm.
But powerful stories, and wouldn't want to go through it,
Oh,
but powerful how they come out of it. Yeah.
yeah, it's unbelievable. My favorite book, or maybe favorite isn't the right word, but the most meaningful book I've ever read is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
I was getting ready to
Yeah.
say, when I attempted suicide, the doctor, psychologist that would come into my room, when I guess they finally told him, and he came in, he told me to order Man's Search for Meaning by
Hmm.
Viktor Frankl.
Yeah.
And so he'd give me work while I was in hospital 7 weeks. And so he'd give me a chapter to read to come back, the following week to discuss it. And so,
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
that
Wow.
was the, that was the first book. Yeah. After and I still have the book on my bookshelf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially the first half of that, it's a pretty short book anyway. And that
Yeah.
first half of the book is just, if you have I don't know, maybe 100 pages there. If you have time to read 100 pages, which most of us do at some point here, gosh, it is the most meaningful 100 pages, at least I've ever read.
Yeah, it's again powerful.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe we as humans go through that, but it's hard to believe we as humans put these other people through that.
Yeah.
But again, to figure it out and find a way to keep a little bit of hope to be able to move on. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, so a couple years after my divorce, I went through a couple really good years. So I got to travel quite a bit, and I did a lot of fun things. And then I started getting another stomach ache, and I was misdiagnosed a few times, and then finally got a diagnosis, and it was severe cirrhosis, which was also end-stage liver disease. And I ended up getting mentally sick from hepatic encephalopathy, which it's blood poisoning, and it inflames your brain. And I went down for a transplant evaluation at the University of Minnesota. They thought like, well, maybe you'll be able to hang on, this healthy lifestyle, now we're treating it. You quit drinking, you started eating healthy, and I'm exercising more. I really took my health, and I did that for a while, did that for a couple of years even. And I did a lot of traveling. That's actually when I went to Auschwitz, and I had gone to Egypt and Jerusalem and all these, Berlin, Oslo. I met my great-great-grandparents in Oslo at their grave.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I did all these things, not knowing exactly how much time I had left either. And actually during that time too, they had thought I had liver cancer because I had tested positive on this liquid biopsy, and they saw a lump on my liver, and they thought like, oh, well, you have liver cancer. So then I knew I was going to have a transplant at some point.
Okay. That's what I was going to ask. Before or after the transplant? Was it something in the transplant?
No, it was before. Yeah, it was before. Okay. So when people have cirrhosis, they have a really higher likelihood of getting liver cancer. So they test quite frequently for liver cancer, and I tested positive. So, but I had went to Jerusalem, and I think I came to peace, and it goes back to Viktor Frankl, because Viktor Frankl, it's, there's meaning in suffering, and it's people that saw suffering as kind of a test of their, a test of themselves, a test of their willpower, a test of their strength. And that's the way I took it. So I failed miserably when I was married, and when I was going through my vasculitis and colitis and things like that, and recovered from that. But I failed miserably. It couldn't have been worse. Through my dark tourism experiences, like I said, I learned to be a true Stoic, whereas like I didn't have control over a lot of these things. But what I did have control over, like my healthy eating, not drinking, so I did all that, taking medication, but I had no fear. I just, like, I kind of gave myself, especially when I went to Jerusalem, I just learned to have no fear of dying, like in a healthy way, not in a 20-year-old, I can't die, I can do anything I want. No, not in that way, in a way where like I'm just not going to be scared of it. And I lived my life and did amazing things during that time, and I had a transplant, and that was actually pretty amazing. I almost saw it more as an adventure than something to be scared of, which. So
with the transplant, did you continue with your traveling?
Yeah, actually.
Or is that limited? Is that limited because of the transplant?
No, I actually. Okay. So 6 weeks after my transplant, I was in Los Angeles because I wanted to I live in northern Minnesota, and it was in March, and the weather wasn't very nice. So I could feel myself backsliding a little bit. So I got permission and went to Los Angeles 6 weeks after my transplant, went there by myself, walked around a ton. But since that time, I've been all over the United States. I went to Japan about 6 months after my transplant. I brought my son to Japan. Wow. And then in a month, I'm going to Kenya and Tanzania to go back camping in the Serengeti and the Masai Mara. And
oh wow, yeah.
So
when I was younger in school, I did just enough to stay eligible to play baseball in high school.
That's about what I did too. Yeah.
But I wished now that I'm a lot older, I wished I would have concentrated more in classroom because it would have made things easier when I did get to college.
Mhm.
Um, but I wish I'd played more attention to history
Yeah.
and the stuff I'm learning today. I love watching that Expedition Unknown with whatever his name, Josh, whatever,
Oh,
on
yeah, yeah,
Disney
Gates.
Channel,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
all the where he goes and stuff. Oh,
yep,
I love watching all that.
yep,
So
yep, yep. Josh Gates. He's what actually I got a tattoo here in Jerusalem,
there
and
you go.
it's from the oldest tattoo shop in the world. And actually, I was
Wow.
watching on the plane.
I
I was
hope they got
watching.
new needles.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, but actually, they use a stone that they've been using for hundreds of years to they
Oh,
put
to do the
ink on one
yeah
side of the stone. So
yeah
so it has a some touch of history into it. But there was
yeah.
new needles and stuff. Yeah,
I
but
got a friend that spent some time in prison, and he talks about how he used his jailhouse tattoo.
oh yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
talking about how they took some motor out of something and
Oh
an
my
ink
gosh.
pen and with his
Yeah,
motor, and
yeah, yeah.
ink dripping into it from a needle or whatever. Yeah, so but that would be fun getting it what we would say the old fashioned way,
Yeah,
you
like
know,
the hammer
or the
hammer and
yeah with the
yeah.
stone and and stuff like that. That would yeah.
Mhm,
So
mhm. But yeah, I guess my point was like Josh Gates. I saw him; he got the same tattoo. Well, after I did, but
yeah,
yeah, yep.
stole your idea.
He stole my idea. Yeah, he was watching. Yeah, he must have read my book. Yeah,
So all right, since you said book, let's put that back up there again
yeah,
for anybody watching here. Again, get you a copy. There it
yeah,
is, Dr. Scott,
yeah.
Chad Scott, Beyond the Darkness. So transformative journeys through dark tourism. So I'd say I've never, because I haven't done a lot of traveling, I never
Mhm,
heard of it. Dark tourism. Is there a separate, maybe not separate, but category traveling? And I'm
mhm,
assuming dark meaning bad things happen, negative things happen,
mhm.
and seeing the outcomes or whatever.
Yeah. So dark tourism isn't a new phenomenon. It's been around
Okay.
since people traveled. I mean, they back in antiquity, they traveled to the Battle of Marathon, that site, and Mount Vesuvius, and the gladiator games, and public
Wow. That
executions,
would be,
and those that would have been considered dark tourism back in the day.
yeah.
So today there's a study in the United States, a fairly big study, that 83% of all people have gone to dark tourism sites, and about 15% more, or was it 10% more, wanted to go to a dark tourism site. So almost 95% of all people, either planned or had gone to a dark tourism site. So
So,
dark tourism sites dark tourism was coined by researchers in the 90s,
okay.
and it's actually an academic discipline, more so in the UK, but it's going to places of death, disaster, tragedy, suffering, places like that. So on one end you have places of genocide,
Yeah.
cemeteries, battlefields, and it it moves around all down the spectrum. Like the 9/11 Memorial, Pearl Harbor, like this Whitney plantation,
Hmm.
and then on the kind of on the farther other side is there's places in Berlin and London, the dungeons there, which is kind of it talks about, how do I explain it? You go from room to room in these places, and they have actors acting out like Jack the Ripper
Oh,
and
okay.
the
Okay.
witch trials
I get you.
and stuff like that, and it's actually quite entertaining and it's fun to go through. But at the same time, you're still learning about
Yeah. Still learning about the
a dark
history of it.
dark history. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get some reflections even doing things like that, and then also ghost tours, and a couple months ago, I actually spent the night in Lizzie Borden's room. Who,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's supposed to be one of the most haunted places in the world, and I stayed by myself in Lizzie Borden's room, and it was
Wow.
just me and
That's
this
awesome.
other family that were in the house by ourselves. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really something.
I got
Uh,
a guy that when I was coaching baseball years ago, of course he was on the opposite team, but got to know him and everything. Him and some people here in Tennessee, and I don't know the name of it. Sorry about this guy. But they do haunted houses thing. They go to see if it's houses or
Oh, sure. Yeah.
or with some asylum homes,
Oh, yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and go and see if they're haunted. And
Okay.
I forgot the name of their group is, but they've been on one of them Discovery channels
Oh, yeah.
before
Okay.
doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he
That's quite
goes by, I think he goes by Doogie. I think that's what he goes by on the
okay.
show, but I
Oh,
can't
cool.
remember the name of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
told
So
him,
I've done a few things. The jury's still out in my mind, whether it's I guess real or not, but it's super interesting and fun to do. It's really a connection to history. I was in Gettysburg and I went on a ghost hunt, and I was in this old farmhouse, which was also during the Civil War, it was used as a field hospital. And they said there was a pile of arms and legs that they had amputated just laying outside the window because a surgeon would cut it off, throw it
you
out the
just
window.
pitch it. Wow.
Yeah, and then there's a field out there where they just buried the dead, unmarked graves, and
Yeah.
and I was in there, talking to Civil War. I mean, they weren't talking back to me. I was hoping they would,
I
but
hear you.
but where do you ever go and try to empathize with somebody that was in the Civil War? Like you're actually having a conversation with them. I mean, that really is an unforgettable experience, whether or not you get anything back.
I'm glad they have all of these as a museum type or tourism type, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But can you imagine people destroyed all them stuff at the very beginning? When it's all over, they go, we don't want him to remember any of this. Let's get rid of it. But I think we have to have it so we don't forget it, so
Right.
we don't have it again.
Right. Well, and that's a big thing about dark tourism is like people would have often asked me like, why would you want to go to those places? Why would you want to go to Auschwitz? Don't you feel terrible going through there? Yes, the answer is absolutely. Probably the most life-changing, well, I shouldn't say life-changing moment, but one of my most life-changing moments in my life was there's a gas chamber that's still it certainly was my most life-changing tourism moment.
Yeah.
Was going into the last gas chamber that's still standing in Auschwitz. And you're walking down these stairs where hundreds or thousands of men, women, and children walk down, and you stand in that room. It's like just a giant bare basement, and that's where they drop the pellets down, and you can just picture the suffering and the people dropping one by one, and you literally feel sick, like you're gonna throw up. There were a handful of times at Auschwitz where it's like, oh man, this is I don't know if I can handle this, and then you walk in through the other room, which is where they have the furnaces with rail tracks, which just shows you how, like, gosh, is this like McDonald's? I mean, like that's the way they treated people, like we were hamburgers, throwing them in these furnaces, and you walk out and you get such a sense of relief walking out. But my God, like I knew I wasn't the same person anymore. It changed my life, and it doesn't change you in a negative way. It changes you in a better way. You're a better person. You're more of a
it makes you think of life better.
Yeah, you're more of a humanitarian.
Be
Absolutely.
more thankful that you didn't go through it, but just thankful for life. Yeah, like you said, better humanitarian.
Yeah,
Wow.
And you go through these places, and if you you put a lot of empathy into it, you try to place yourself kind of in their position, and when you do that, you see little pieces of yourself and how maybe you would have responded, and or how you hope you would have responded, and then going with like just complete reverence for what happens. It's so life-changing. Every dark place I've gone, obviously the darker and more recent, the more significant, but still even the stuff on the more mild side of the spectrum, I mean, it changes you, because you realize that people have suffered and have you feel like you're carrying the torch for them, so you become more of a humanitarian. But also that fragility of life, it's like I'm gonna die soon. Life isn't very long. You can't take life for granted. Live every minute. Love. So you learn to love deeper, and everything seems more beautiful when you've walked through the darkness.
Yeah. And you mentioned something here a minute ago that I think this is strong. That you said you hoped you would have done, the right thing, whether it's standing up in rebellion or doing something, even though it's wrong. it's going to give you another day of life,
Yeah.
whatever it is. And so
Yeah.
hopefully you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times people who did the right thing, they ended up, being tortured. They were put in these dark cells where they had to stand all day and be in
Yeah.
their own filth. And, and then they had the execution wall out back. And, but it's like, would I have been brave enough to maybe stand up to them and, and maybe face that fate? And I mean, it's,
We have no
but
idea.
anyway, when you go
hope.
through a transplant and when you don't know if you're going to live or die, because after I went to the U of M and actually ended up having a dry run where I was there for 2 days and then they sent me home because the family backed out from donating the liver. And,
oh, wow.
Well, there's more to the story, but
Yeah.
like the person was hanging on, he was alive, and my doctor wanted to do one more test, and the family said no, and my doctor said, "Well, I need this test," and the family just said, "Well, take it or leave it," and my doctor left it. So, but at that time, my chest was filling up with fluid, and it was getting really hard to breathe. My eyes are really yellow, my skin's really yellow, I'm itchy, I'm like I just don't have any energy. I'm actually still going to work during this whole time, but like barely, and I didn't know if I'd live or die though. It's like, but I, at the same time, going through all these places and learning to not fear death and knowing that other people have suffered, it felt, even though I was by myself, my family was there, but I'm the only one suffering that I'm talking to. These experiences have talked to me over time, and they were talking to me when I was going through my most profound suffering. And I didn't feel so alone because of my experiences at, in Normandy and Auschwitz and Hiroshima and, all these other places. So.
Oh yeah. I can see where you get to grab some energy from the other people that live through or suffer through. And you go in though, hey, if they can do that, I can do this.
Yeah.
So,
you almost feel like you're thanked for going to those places.
Yeah.
I
think it's powerful. Again, I'm glad that they kept all this stuff, but I could see, long time ago, hey, this is so bad and everything, and we don't want this to ever happen and destroy it all, which I'm glad they didn't, again, to show a memorial, if nothing else, for the people.
Well, just think if they wiped out everything related to World War II, especially the Nazis and genocide. And it's like, I mean, history repeats itself, especially, going to these places is like you're living, we, in America, we have this, the saying, never forget our veterans, never forget what happened on 9/11, never forget, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Going to these places is living the never forget, you're not forgetting, and you're carrying their torch. And because of that, hopefully we can prevent future tragedies from happening. And, there's a place called the Topography of Terror in Berlin. And it's on the very site of the SS and Gestapo headquarters. And it walks you right through what happened on why the Nazis even rose to power. And it was very insidious and innocent. And then it became, severe and tragic. And we need to prevent that kind of stuff from happening in other countries, especially my country.
Oh, yeah. So we definitely need to curb the appetite on the mean stuff. Okay. But again, we definitely use it to help hopefully not repeat itself.
Absolutely.
From there. So, all right, Chad, hey, I appreciate you being here, boy. I loved listening to all this. Again, I've been waiting on this here. So,
thanks for having me.
Love the traveling and just hearing the history and the experience. Wow, it's amazing. So
I got to give a shout out though to Dr. Philip Stone he's the director of the Institute of Dark Tourism Studies at the University of Lancashire, because he had contacted me. I'd read about him in a National Geographic book. He's the world's foremost expert in dark tourism. And, and he's done hundreds of studies on dark tourism. And he actually read a concise edition I put out of this book, and he really liked it because of the, how dark tourism can be life-changing for the better, and that's kind of what his theories are about. And so he contacted me, and we had formed a relationship, and he actually wrote the foreword to the book, the Beyond the Darkness book that we're talking about. So
Yes, sir.
cool. And he has a lot of his own books that are really good. So
My man Ed Waters, hey buddy, thank you for popping in. He said conversation like this will help change the world. We need more of it. Good information. So Chad, you're giving good information, buddy.
Well, thank you, Ed. Yeah, it's my pleasure.
You need to get a hold of Dr. Chad here.
Absolutely.
He has his own podcast. His called Dead America.
My podcast? Oh, Ed's is?
Ed.
Oh, Ed's is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Chad and Ed, y'all need to. I'll see if I can introduce y'all, and so you can get on his. So, all right, then you got a podcast.
No, I don't. No, I said I don't. I thought you were talking about me, so I said no. I don't have a podcast.
You were doing. I thought you were going on.
No.
Okay, you don't have a podcast.
No.
All right. So Ed, we need to get Ed and Chad, so y'all can be on his. So to get together.
Yeah, sounds
all
good.
Right. Well, that's about it. And you got me. I don't know if I'd be able to sleep tonight. So, I just love this stuff again. Sorry for the people who had to suffer like they did, but it gives so much inspiration for us to continue on in life for what little thing we got going on.
Yeah, I mean, there truly is meaning in suffering, and you might not know what that is right away, but it'll come to you eventually, and you just have to believe, have hope.
I'm going to have to go back and get that book back out and reread it, because that was 15 years ago, I guess. So go back and reread. All right, Dan, for the ones watching, listening, again, Dr. Chad, his book, Dr. Chad Scott, Beyond the Darkness. All right, Beyond the Darkness. All right, Chad, go ahead and give us your social media, websites, anything, how people get a hold of you.
Yeah, so my main social media is Chad Scott Author on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram, but my website is drchadscott.com. And you can find out more about my book, Beyond the Darkness. If you just want to go right to the retailers, it's on all the online retailers, and kind of hit or miss if it's in a bookstore, but they probably could order it for you. But yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
There you go. Do the old Googling, Dr. Chad Scott. So, all right, Chad, thank you for being here. Hey, I know there's people hurting and struggling today. If you can leave us with a powerful message.
Oh man, I just gave it.
You did.
I'll have to come up with another one. So yeah, the whole hope and suffering. Here's another one. So nothing grows inside of comfort zones. The only thing that grows inside of comfort zones is depression, anxiety, and your world becomes smaller. And you need to shift over to the reckoning phase of life, and you have to walk through the darkness to get to the other side. And when you do get to the other side, like Churchill said, when you're walking through hell, keep walking. Keep doing that, because you sometimes walking straight through hell is the quickest way to get to a better life.
Amen, brother. Hey, I'm glad to put you on the spot for that one. All right, then. So I tell people, when you see the light at the end of the tunnel and you know it's not a train coming, you made it through.
That's right. That's right.
All right, Chad, thank you for being here. I enjoyed your experiences, and gives me a little more experiences.
Yeah. So, thanks for having me.
Hey, Ed, thank you for coming in. Again, I will introduce both of y'all to each other so you can get on his. So everybody else, be sure to share this out. I'm Dr. James Purdue, the professor of perseverance. Do something today, tomorrow, something next week that's going to help you persevere past your